Have you ever wondered what happens when the backbone of an economy starts to crumble? Today, we're going to embark on a journey into the heart of China's real estate crisis, a situation that has been sending shockwaves through the global financial markets. There's a storm brewing in the east, and it's centered around the real estate sector. Major Chinese developers are defaulting on their debts, adding fuel to the fire of an already precarious situation. The Shanghai-based Shimao Group, for instance, has defaulted on a billion-dollar bond, a staggering amount that illustrates the depth of the crisis. But Shimao Group is not alone. Evergrande, the second-largest property developer in China, has been struggling under the weight of its financial obligations. Labeled a defaulter by Fitch Ratings, Evergrande's woes are emblematic of the wider challenges facing the Chinese real estate sector. The roots of this crisis can be traced back to Beijing's crackdown on excessive borrowing and high debt. The Chinese government's measures were well-intentioned, aimed at curbing the reckless lending that had become all too common in the property sector. However, these measures have inadvertently triggered a series of defaults, leaving major developers like Evergrande and Shimao Group in the lurch. Adding to the complexities of this crisis is China's zero-COVID policy, which has exacerbated the problems facing the real estate industry. With the economy slowing down and stringent pandemic measures in place, the industry is grappling with a decline in sales and a plunge in home prices. As we delve deeper into this crisis, remember, each twist and turn affects not just the Chinese economy, but the global financial landscape as well. When one domino falls, it triggers a chain reaction. This is a perfect analogy for the situation unfolding in the Chinese real estate industry. The first domino to fall was Evergrande, one of China's largest property developers, which has over $300 billion in debts and has already defaulted on offshore bonds. This default sent shockwaves through the industry, setting off a chain reaction that has led to a series of defaults by other major developers. Shimao Group, another heavyweight in the Chinese real estate market, followed suit, defaulting on a bond worth $1 billion. The magnitude of the debt held by these companies is staggering, and their inability to repay has left a trail of financial devastation. Investors, both local and international, who held these bonds are now left holding the bag. The fallout from these defaults doesn't stop at the investors. It extends to the banks that lent these developers money, potentially threatening their stability. For instance, property loans accounted for over a quarter of the total banking sector credit in China as of mid-year. The risk of these loans turning into non-performing assets poses a significant threat to the asset quality of these banks. In addition to the banks, secondary industries that are highly dependent on the real estate sector are also feeling the pinch. The ripple effects of these defaults are being felt across the entire economy, slowing growth and straining resources. The domino effect of these defaults also has a human side. Many people who bought properties from these developers are left in limbo, unsure of when or if their homes will be completed. The impact on these individuals and their families is profound and far-reaching. As the dominoes continue to fall, the consequences of these defaults are felt far beyond China's borders. The Chinese real estate market, once a powerhouse of growth, is now a cautionary tale of what can happen when debt spirals out of control. The world watches on as the aftershocks of these defaults reverberate across global financial markets. In a storm, the captain's response can mean the difference between sinking and sailing. And in the tumultuous seas of the real estate crisis, the Chinese government has taken the helm. The government's response to the crisis has been multifaceted, addressing both immediate and long-term issues. To stimulate home sales, they have taken measures such as lowering mortgage rates and easing rules on home purchases. These actions aim to make buying a home more appealing and affordable for Chinese citizens, thereby injecting life back into the stagnant real estate market. But the government's response doesn't stop there. They're also tackling the colossal debt that has been the Achilles heel of major developers. Take Evergrande, for example, the second largest property developer in China, who has been struggling to repay its lenders. The government is leading a debt restructuring plan to help Evergrande navigate its financial straits. This plan, if successful, could serve as a blueprint for other beleaguered developers. However, these responses are not without their critics. Some say the government's actions are too little, too late. Others argue they merely serve as a band-aid for a wound that needs more serious treatment. Still, others worry that these measures, while helping in the short term, might encourage the same reckless borrowing that led to this crisis in the first place. At the heart of the government's response is a delicate balancing act. On the one hand, they must stimulate the real estate market to prevent further economic decline. On the other hand, they must prevent a repeat of the excessive borrowing and high debt that led to the current crisis. This is no easy task, and the government's ability to keep this balance will be crucial in determining the future of the Chinese real estate market. Will these measures be enough to weather the storm? Only time will tell. When a giant stumbles, the ground shakes. And in the world of global economics, China is indeed a giant. Its real estate crisis sends ripples that touch every corner of the world. As the crisis deepens, it's not just the country's economy that feels the tremors, but the political landscape may also shift. Noted investor and philanthropist George Soros has suggested that this crisis could potentially threaten President Xi Jinping's grip on power. A noteworthy claim, considering the real estate sector's significant role in China's economy and Xi Jinping's firm control over the nation. The troubles with Evergrande and other major developers have already caused significant domestic strife. Should more investors turn against the government due to the crisis, it could indeed pose a serious challenge to Xi's leadership. But the crisis does not stop at the country's borders. Being the world's second largest economy, China's real estate woes have serious global implications. Other nations, especially those heavily invested in China, are watching closely. A significant default could send shockwaves through global markets, potentially triggering a domino effect that could impact the global economy. Adding an extra layer of complexity to the crisis is China's demographic problem. With a declining birth rate, the country is facing labor shortages. This exacerbates the real estate crisis as it reduces demand for housing while simultaneously straining the workforce needed to construct new developments. It's a double-edged sword that China must navigate carefully, and it's not just the economic consequences that are of concern. The social repercussions in a country with a population of over 1 billion people could be profound. As the crisis unfolds, it could potentially impact living conditions, employment rates, and even social stability. This crisis also highlights the interconnectedness of our global economy. No country is an island in this era of globalization. A tremor in one part of the world can indeed cause an earthquake in another. It's a stark reminder of how closely intertwined our fates have become in this global village. As China grapples with its real estate crisis, the world watches and waits. The repercussions of this crisis will echo not just through China, but across the world. How it's handled could shape not just China's future, but the global economic landscape for years to come. Every crisis presents an opportunity for change. And this, my friends, is where we find China's real estate sector today, on the precipice of change, but also in the midst of a profound crisis. This crisis, rooted in excessive borrowing and high debt, has rocked the foundation of China's real estate industry to its core, causing prominent developers such as Shimao Group and Evergrande to default on their debts. The result? A sharp plunge in new home prices and a steep decline in contracted sales. Yet it's not all doom and gloom. Authorities are taking measures to revive home sales, lowering mortgage rates, easing rules on home purchases, and even leading debt restructuring plans. But the road to recovery, as we all know, is rarely a smooth one. Beijing's commitment to its zero-COVID approach has added an extra layer of complexity to the situation. This policy, while effective in controlling the spread of the virus, has inadvertently exacerbated the real estate industry's problems, making the road to recovery even more challenging. So what does the future look like for China's real estate sector? The recovery, most agree, will likely be slow and bumpy. Sales in the property sector showed signs of declining less dramatically in June, hinting at a potential light at the end of the tunnel. But the journey towards that light will require patience, resilience, and a willingness to adapt to new circumstances. And what of China's position on the global stage? Well, the world's eyes are firmly fixed on the Middle Kingdom. From economists to investors, everyone is watching closely to see how China navigates this crisis. Will they manage to stabilize their real estate sector? Or will the ripple effects of their crisis continue to reverberate around the globe? While the road ahead is uncertain, one thing is clear: the world will be watching China's next move closely.